course of an education system, it's messy. There's not an easy, clean way to do it. And so I think what you're seeing now is the messy part, where we've got about 4,500 employees in the school district, and almost every single one of them is going to be affected by our turnaround plan. That I think speaks to the magnitude of this, that it's not just a surface level, let's wash a few things. It's basically a demolishing of the present way of doing business and coming back to the new way of doing business.
I'm sorry. Can I stop you for just a moment?
You can stop me whenever you want. It is your party.
And can I apologize to everyone here? Can I ask you to bear with the introduction one more time? There was a miscommunication, and they didn't know where it started. So would you mind if we started over? We'd like to take this and rebroadcast it, but we'd like for people to hear everything. Okay. Thank you all for being with us today. I hope you have enjoyed the lunch and are ready for an interesting presentation from Dr. Pat Cooper, Superintendent, Lafayette Parish Public School System. But first, I'd like to ask you all to consider joining the League of Women Voters and let your voices be heard. We are a nonpartisan political organization whose members work together to study issues, register voters, and offer substantive presentations on topics of local interest, such as the one you'll hear today. I also want to thank the AOC Community Media Center for the use of their facilities and for broadcasting our public meetings. One last thing, please silence your cell phones. Now, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Pat Cooper, the man with the plan to move Lafayette Parish Public Schools from a C status to an A status within 6 years. Dr. Cooper is a product of Louisiana public education, having earned almost all of his degrees at Louisiana State University. These include a BS in biology and physics, a master's in special education and emotionally disturbed, and a specialist in special education administration. Oh, and just for good measure, he earned his doctorate of education from the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, Colorado. He is certified in biology, general science, physics, and socially maladjusted and emotionally disturbed. Cooper holds additional certification as principal, supervisor of instruction, and city parish local superintendent. Dr. Cooper is what we call in the business highly qualified. He has been a superintendent in West Feliciana Parish and in the Macomb School District in Macomb, Mississippi. Before he came over here to join us in Lafayette, he was CEO of the Early Childhood and Family Learning Foundation in New Orleans. Dr. Cooper insists that the children are waiting, and he takes that to heart. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Pat Cooper.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the League of Women Voters for asking me to do this. I think it's just really important that everybody gets to keep up with our progress. Things are moving very quickly because of two things. One is obviously what was just said. There are a lot of kids out there that are waiting for us to do a better job. And the second thing is we just couldn't let another school year go by without making the changes we needed to make. It would have been very easy just to sit back and say, let me get accustomed to things in Lafayette and this first semester, and then we'll start making our changes next year. Well, that's a whole nother year that children are not going to be getting what they need. It's a whole nother group of children that are going to be dropping out needlessly. It's a whole nother group of children that are going to be out there on the streets of Lafayette after they've dropped out, certainly not just playing dominoes, but they're breaking into your house and mine and stealing our stuff, doing drugs, having babies, and the things that we know don't create the kind of society that we want to create. So I made the decision early on with the members of the board to move very quickly. And so when you do that, it's very messy. You don't take a 4,500 person school district with 44 schools and make the kind of changes we're trying to make and it be a very delicate, clean process. they're just things you have to do, and sometimes you do them with just, faith. But most of the things that we're doing are data-based and research-related, so that I'm very confident they're going to work. And the other thing is, this is my 42nd year in public education, and this is the same kinds of things I've been doing for a long time in every school district I've ever been in. They've worked. And even more than that, it's just common sense. So it is messy. It's like, trying to paddle a boat in a sea of mud. It's just not a clean way to do this. But I think once you see July 1st come around and the start of school next year, there'll be a lot of things in place, and it won't take long for things to begin to run very smoothly. But right now, you've got a lot of employees that are scared, a lot of rumors, because nobody knows exactly what's going on. But I think all that's going to be cleared up too. So I'm going to begin this this little talk with you, because that's what I kind of make these things talks with you, because I want to make sure we have time to discuss things and answer questions and all that. But to give you kind of an update, last night at the board meeting, we made a lot of progress. About 2 weeks before that, we made even more progress, and a couple of weeks before that, we made even more progress. And by that, I mean we did get our turnaround plan approved by the board. The first year is very specific in terms of what we're going to do, and then we have a conceptual plan for the next 5 years after that. With the whole idea is that we do create this A school district. And I want to speak to that a little bit, because when I say an A school district, it's important that we're an A school district according to the state standards, because that means we're doing well academically, we're doing well with dropouts, we're doing well with all those things that they like to talk about. But I also want to be an A school district in another way, and that's for Lafayette Parish, for all the citizens. Because what we want to do is do things so well that not only do we decrease the dropout rate, but by doing that, we decrease the crime rate. We want to increase the graduation rate, and by doing that, we're going to have kids that are starting off, walking out of high school, in our case, with either a high school diploma, or in some cases, they already have earned a 2-year degree at the early college academy. So we want all of our kids, 100% of our kids, to complete that high school experience. And if we do that, then your economy is going to be better, because people are going to walk out of school and they're going to be able to be trained, or they can go to college, or they can go to technical school, or they can go to the military. But the most important thing is they don't walk out of school with a drug habit or a criminal record, and they're healthy. And I think that's really important, to be an A school district for Lafayette Parish. Because we can be an A school district, there are ways to do this in terms of the state, but still not have a very good school district, because we're letting kids slip through the cracks. And there are ways you can get around that. Kids just slip away. Nobody knows where they go. But they end up in jail, or they end up in a welfare system that's not conducive for them or anybody else. So what we're trying to create is something bigger and better than just an academic A school district. We're trying to create a school district that's going to serve the community. And I want to say that to you, because that explains a lot of the programs that we're putting in that aren't your ordinary programs. And if you look across the state, look across the country, there are not very many places that have French immersion programs. There are not very many places that have the quality of the art programs that we have, the partnerships, because they're cutting all those things out. Because they're saying all we want to do is read and write and arithmetic. And when you do that, it's the kiss of death for a lot of children. Because your traditional reading, writing, and arithmetic is important as a starter. Everybody has to read by the 3rd grade. Everybody has to be proficient in basic math by the 3rd grade. But then at that point, and I call it that you learn to read by 3rd grade, and then you read to learn from 3rd grade up. And we have to have those opportunities to match children with their interest, so that we don't just have this cookie cutter approach that everybody has to go a certain route. So one of the things that we're doing is we're creating a system that is going to be conducive for making sure all of our children are cared for. Now, when I say cared for, that means to me, I want all of these children to have what my children have. I want all of these children to have the opportunities that my children have. Now, they may not be successful, but we owe them the opportunity. We can't just say because you're black and live on the north side or redneck and live on the south side that you can't learn. Just because maybe your parents aren't there for you, or maybe because your circumstances aren't great. I think we have to just say that every child can learn if we do what we would do for our own children. So to me, that includes things like health care. That what we know in Lafayette is that a lot of our children don't get adequate health care. And if you don't get adequate health care, you don't come to school ready to learn. You're going to make sure that your children have therapy. You're going to make sure that your children go to the dentist. You're going to make sure that your children, go to the doctor. So many of our children in Lafayette don't have that. The only doctor they see is in the emergency room, which is the least effective, most cost-prohibitive service we can give. So we are putting in what we call health and wellness programs in the schools. Every school is going to have a full-time social worker. Every school is going to have a full-time nurse. And some parents and some folks will say, well, Dr. Cooper, you're going too far. Schools shouldn't be doing that. And I agree. In an ideal world, everybody would be just like you guys. They would take care of their children. But for whatever reason, that's not happening, and that child still shows up for school. And we have to service the child. Doctors have a Hippocratic oath. I think we have a pedagogical oath. That if you're going to be in public education, the deal is you serve all the children. You don't separate them out. So that's my goal, is to make sure that all these children have basic health care. And we don't plan to have to pay for that. That's going to come through the Medicaid reimbursements. That's going to come through, we have really great partners here in Lafayette General, Lourdes, the other hospitals, Women's and Children, the federally qualified health centers. Everybody is willing to help. So when you hear that we're going to be putting in these positions in the schools, most of them will be paid for out of our Medicaid reimbursement or our partners who are just giving us those folks because they know children need help. Lourdes, for instance, is running a clinic for us at Northside High School. They don't charge us a cent. That's the kind of thing I love about Lafayette. Everybody wants to partner to do better. And I know it's not perfect, but I've lived in a lot of places, Washington, D.C., Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and those are kind of mean cities. People don't really work together. Even the nonprofits don't work together. In Lafayette, what just like a heaven I walked into, because we've got people who really want to work together. But what they're expecting is you got to prove to us that you're for real. And I think that's what they're saying to us as a school district. You got to prove to us you're for real. And we're going to help you, but you got to be transparent. So I think this health and wellness issue is one of those big issues. Some people say we're going too far. I say no. This is the only way we can salvage our public school system and therefore salvage Lafayette. Because you're on the decline. We came in, not just me, but the school board, the public, United Way, the chamber, all those folks, LaPesque, who really, and you guys who really said, look, we want to be better. You came in just in time, because Lafayette Public Schools were at the tipping point. You were about to start going downhill, and once you start going downhill, there's really no stopping it, because it's just too hard. So we're a C school district right now, but you've been declining over the last 10 years. But not a steep decline, but you've been declining. But I think if we hadn't stopped it and put the programs we're putting in right now, that decline would have just escalated. And then you would have ended up with a city that was divided and that was not as nurturing as you know your Lafayette to be today. So in addition to the health and wellness programs, we're making sure that we put in early childhood programs. That is something that we need to talk about, because the rumor is out there that we're going to be bringing in all the birth to 5-year-old kids and we're going to serve them in the public schools. That has never been the model. It's never been the model that I've used. If I can explain it to you this way, we are going to be serving 4-year-old kids through the LA4 program. That's a state-sponsored program. But from 4 down, we're going to be sending people to the local child cares and the Head Starts, and we're going to be showing them how to get better. Not that all of them need that help, but we're going to determine who needs help, because every kindergartner who starts school in the Lafayette Public Schools will be assessed next year with a validated instrument. We're going to disaggregate that data, so we're going to know where every child comes from as they enter kindergarten. And we can go back to Mother Goose Child Care and say, you sent us 40 children last year. This is where the deficits are. We're not going to punish you or make fun of you. We're going to say we'll help you fix those deficits so that you can begin to give us children who are ready to learn. Now, that's a whole lot cheaper than us saying we're going to be serving all the birth to 5-year-old kids in Lafayette Parish. That's never been the model. The model I'm explaining to you is the one I've used every place I've ever been, and it works. People won't help. The child cares won't help. The Head Starts won't help. We're going to make sure that every child care and every Head Start in Lafayette Parish has what they need to do what they need. And most of that is a curriculum and training. That's not expensive. So we're taking our dollars and we're creating about 10 resource teachers who will be out in the community working with those child cares. Because we don't want to have to teach those children. And we don't want these people to close up their businesses. We just want them to give us children that are ready to learn. Because if they start school, and this is what happens in Lafayette for about 40% of the children or more, when they start school at 5 years of age, your children start school with a 2,500 word vocabulary. And why is that? Well, because you've read to them, you've talked to them, you've taken them on vacation, you've done all these wonderful things. You've had that interaction. Remember, we've been in education reform for 47 years, and it's been failing. So we've got generation after generation of parents out there who didn't have a high school diploma, who are down on their luck, who don't know what to do. They are not reading to their children. It's not that they don't want to, they just don't know they're supposed to. Or maybe they can't read themselves. So your children are coming with a 2,500 word vocabulary, and at 5 years of age, they're probably at a 5-year-old developmental level, but I bet most of them are even higher than that because they had you. We've got all these other children that are coming to school, and they have an 800 word vocabulary. And about 400 of those are curse words. They can't use them in school. You know, so, and they're at a 3.5-year-old developmental level. Now, our quick fix in education has always been to say, well, there's something wrong with you intellectually. For 90% of these children, there's nothing wrong with them intellectually. They don't have an intellectual deficit, they have an experiential deficit. Nobody read to them. Nobody talked to them. Nobody parented them. So we can spend forever blaming the parents, or we can say, we can make that up. We can fix that. So that's where your early childhood comes in. And it's not that we don't want parents accountable and involved, but tomorrow morning I got children coming to school. And I can use that as an excuse, which we do all the time in education. Oh, those parents, they're not doing their job. Well, excuse me. Oh, us educators are not doing our job. You know, one of the things we have to say is, again, the kid shows up, the child shows up. Our job is to make sure we teach them. And we can't blame anybody. That's our job. And we've gotten this habit over the last 47 years of blaming everything in the world. You know, from parents to poverty and whatever. Poverty doesn't do you in. Poverty keeps you from having access to these opportunities we're talking about. So if we overcome that lack of access by putting in the services in the schools or partnering to provide those services, then that child in poverty is going to make it. I bet some of you grew up in poverty. You had somebody who urged you on. And all the resiliency research says you just have to have one adult somewhere who's going to nurture you and champion you, and you're probably going to make it, no matter where you came from. And so our job is to create schools that are families. Not to say to the parents you shouldn't be doing certain things, and we're going to help get them there. We're going to do parent training and all that. But in the meantime, we've got to have schools that are families, and we don't want to lose not one single member of our family. So if you can kind of look at it that way, yes, we're going to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic, and we're going to do all these other wonderful things, and kids are going to do well academically and socially. But you know what else? Those kids are going to learn that there's somebody in this world who loves me. And to me, that's the strongest inspiration you can give to a child. Somebody cares about me. Somebody I can look up to. And if it's the parent, that's fine. If it's not, then we've got to provide that. And I know that's very controversial. But that's why we're in such deep trouble in this nation in terms of education. We think that evaluating teachers and evaluating schools and all that kind of stuff is going to fix the problem, and that's not going to fix the problem. The problem has to be human relationships. You know, if you get a child in your school and he knows you're pulling for him, he'll learn his math, he'll learn his reading, he'll come to school every day, he'll behave. But if you don't have that, it's not going to happen. We were losing 40% of the children in this country in 1965 when education reform started. That's when Head Start was formed. That's when President Johnson signed the Title I program. We were losing 40% of the kids in 1965. You didn't notice it, though, because they were all going to the paper mills, or they were in the oil and patch. They were doing other things. You didn't have to have a high school diploma. We're still, in Lafayette right now, we have about a 31% dropout rate. Now, your lowest ranking high school, Northside, which is obviously in the news every day, has about a 59% dropout rate. But here's the shame of it, and this is what I said when I got here. The shame of it is your best school, Lafayette High School, with the best children, everything, they have an 82% graduation rate. That's not good enough. So I pile as much shame on Lafayette High as I do on Northside High. And nobody's doing well. But the point is, you can't say, oh, they're not doing well because they're in the north part of the parish, or they're not doing well because they're a certain color. No, we're not doing well anywhere. And that's the problem. So our job is to figure out, how do we get this 30% out of the way, get all these children completing high school, and then you're going to have a different kind of citizenry out there. You're going to have an economy that's going to continue to do well. So I want to just make that point to you. The early childhood, the health and wellness, those are kind of things that nobody else funds, really, but we're making it priorities for us. We're going to figure out ways to fund it. We're going to make that happen because we know that's the key to everything. If you get these kids started off okay, they're going to be fine. If they reach third grade and they don't know how to read and don't know how to do basic math, we've got a battle for the rest of their career. You're remediating, you're spending a lot of money on things that are not working anyway. We're just wasting our time, and we do things because they look good. So that's part of what we're doing in Lafayette Parish now. We're not going to do stuff because it looks good. If it's not data-based and research-driven, we're not doing it. So if you can look at this in Globo, we're starting kids off. We're going to get them come to school ready to learn. As they're in the pipeline, we're going to take care of them in terms of their physical health, their mental health, things like that. We're going to show their parents how to do that. And then we're going to change the way that we do the business of education. And I think that's kind of the crucial part of this. I don't know if you noticed a couple of weeks ago when we had our board meeting, we have completely revamped our central office, and everybody there is having to reapply for jobs. But we cut out about 171 positions, which is most everybody, and we created about another 70 positions. We put those other positions left, roughly 100, we're going to put those into the schools because the schools need the help. Central office never taught anybody. So it's not like we're going to have a lot of savings, but we're taking that $2.6 million that we saved at the central office and we're putting people into the schools. Now, we're doing the business of education. We're not doing the business of running education. And I hope you understand the difference in that. We've said to the principals, we're in this with you. We're going to give you all the site-based management ability. You're going to be able to choose a lot of things that you want to do, but we expect you to go from a D to a C in 2 years. And if you don't, your contract's not going to be renewed. Now, I've got the same thing for me. In 4 years, if we hadn't got to that B level as a school district, then my contract doesn't need to be renewed. So I'm in it with them. It's just, we're not playing. This is hardball because our children are waiting. It just seems so simple to me. What we need to be doing is teaching children rather than all the politics and all the stuff that swirls around that. So that's my goal, is just to make sure that we give these principals and these teachers a shot at being successful with even the most troubled children. Which brings me to my next piece. You've got, this plan, you have it, I have it, that we're going to be creating children that are going to be ready to come to school at kindergarten, ready to, they know how to read at third grade and all that kind of stuff. But what about the kids that are in the pipeline right now, that are disrupting classes, that are discipline problems? What we've done in this district? What we've done is we've just kind of spread them all out so nobody sees it. We've got 7 different alternative programs, which means yeah, we're taking this group of kids because they can't make it in a regular school, and we're going to put them over here, and we're going to take this group and put them over here, and we're going to take this group and put them over here, and this group and put them over here, and we call it alternative programs, but it's just more of the same. But it just looks good because we call it an alternative program. But if you look at the data on our alternative programs, whether it be over-age 5th graders, over-age 8th graders, special ed children that are discipline problems, regular ed kids that are discipline problems, those are the 30% we're losing. And when those kids drop out of school, they're mad. And a lot of them are mean. They didn't jump out of the womb mad and mean. Adults created these kids. And so part of what we're going to do in this pipeline is, and we got it approved last night, was we're taking NP Moss Annex, which is an old school built in 1920. We went back to the master plan that was created by the prior board and others, and we looked at it and said, all right, they were going to redo it. It was going to cost $9.6 million. We're going to redo it. It's going to cost $3.2 because we shopped around. We said we don't want state-of-the-art stuff in terms of looks so that some architect is going to win an award. We want solid, good, clean classrooms and space. So we went from a $9.6 million project to a $3.2 million project. And we're doing that for a reason, because we're going to bring all these alternative kids into one place. But the difference is going to be, we're going to give them all this help. We're going to have therapists and nurses and graduation coaches. The idea is that those children are going to complete high school. We're putting in a new rule this year. What we're saying is, kids, get happy because you ain't going anywhere. That means we're not suspending you to home. We're not going to expel you to home. There's no data in the world that ever said suspending a child for 3 days to go home ever worked. No data. It is just convenient. So when children have to be suspended, and some of them will, they'll come to the alternative school. We're going to call it, though, not an alternative school. It's going to be the NP Moss Opportunity School, because it's going to be a place for hope. Those children are either going to come over there and we're going to deal with them, get them ready, and they'll go back to their school, or they can literally stay there until they graduate. But that solves two problems for us. One is we get the disruptive children out of the regular schools, but we don't dump them into these dump sites all over the parish like we've been doing. And I know people are going to be offended by that, but there's no data to say that any of these programs worked. But it was just convenient to get these kids out of the way. We're going to put them in the NP Moss Opportunity School, and it's going to be a fine school. It's going to be a beautiful school. It's going to be a place where they walk in and say, oh, these people care about me. Not relegate them to some dump somewhere and say, you're not good enough to be in the regular school. You're not even good enough to be in a decent setting over here. No, you're a person. You're good enough to have what my children have. So we're going to remodel NP Moss. We're going to put all these children there. We're going to put lots of services. And those are going to be that 30% again that would have dropped out. But I guarantee you, most of those are going to finish school. So that's another piece of this, that we have to give teachers the opportunity to teach. So we fix the health and wellness stuff. Eventually we'll have kids coming to school ready to learn because they went through early childhood. But in the meantime, we're going to remove those children who just can't function in this environment and bring them to a smaller, more nurturing environment where there's about a 12-to-1 pupil-teacher ratio. There's going to be a case manager assigned to each one of them. Every one of these children is going to get a lot of service. And I would guarantee you they're all going to make it. Now, that's a pretty big guarantee. Well, maybe all not, not every one of them, but most of them are going to make it. And this is not a program that I've not used before. We've done this before, and it's made a difference. In Macomb, Mississippi, 95% free and reduced lunch, 90% minority, all the poor black children. We went from below a 60% graduation rate, and in 10 years we're at 98% using these same programs. 98% of those children who had everything going against them graduated from high school. So don't tell me you can't do it. You just have to have the will to do it, and you can't do it with the same old system we've been using here in this parish. And I'm not blaming anybody, but it's just we have to understand there's a different kind of child out there right now, and we have to change our methods. And it does mean we have to pretend like we're families, and that that's the only way I know to do this. So during this pipeline, we're going to be doing things, you know, and we're going to try to keep kids in school. Every school is going to have what they call a health and wellness team, all 44. That's going to be the core of the family. It's like when you have a family meeting, you know, you all come together and say, wait a minute, we got a problem here, we got to fix it. That's what this is going to be. That nurse, that therapist, that counselor, that principal, you know, they're all going to sit around a table. They're going to bring in whomever, and they're going to say, this child has a problem. Let's figure out how to fix it. And at the end of that meeting, somebody's going to be the case manager, because next week we're going to say, did you fix the problem? So see, now they're not accountable to Obama. They're not accountable to Jindal. They're not even accountable to Pat Cooper. They're accountable to people in their school, in their own family. That makes a difference. So if you were supposed to get this kid signed up for Medicaid into a dentist next week and you say you didn't, you got a bunch of your family that's going to be pretty mad. Because we want to keep these kids in their home school. But if that can't happen, we are going to have this wonderful place that they will be, and they're going to have a shot at finishing school. The other thing we're trying to do is like the calendar, for instance. How do we create an environment where teachers can teach? So we got approved last night our new school calendar. It's one I've used every place I've ever been, and it works like a charm. It's amazing what happens. We have 4 9-week sessions. See, half your schools were on 6-week sessions. Some of them were on 9-week sessions. I mean, everybody was doing different stuff. So everybody's going to be on these 4 9-week sessions. Same number of days in school. Parents are going to be responsible for their children at home the same number of days, except they're going to come at a different time. What I said was, let's create a calendar where we have 9 weeks of uninterrupted instruction. Everybody comes to school every day. We don't have any more of those elementary planning days where the elementary kids don't come, but the junior high and the high school do. I mean, number one, that doesn't work, and number two, what about an inconvenience to the parents? You know, we've got to be sensitive to what parents need and want. So after this first 9 weeks of uninterrupted instruction, we're going to have a week that we call our intersession. Now, that's basically a week off. Parents will be responsible for their children. But that means we have one less week in the summer that you're responsible for your children. So your child care cost doesn't change. And that intersession, though, because we're doing site-based management, principals and faculties are going to be able to say at the end of that 9 weeks, do we want to have some in-service during this intersession? Do we want to do remediation for children that fail the first 9 weeks to catch them up so they don't fail the second 9 weeks? And believe me, they're all looking at that, because that principal has to know, if I don't get from a D to a C, my job's gone. So we're going to start saying, it's your deal. We're going to ask you to make some decisions. And I promise you, principals and teachers are so much smarter than central office people. They will figure this out. And we're going to give them more help, and they're going to make it. That's why I'm so confident. There's not a one of those people out there that doesn't want these children to do okay. So I know I've got 2 minutes left. I'm going to just say a couple of other things. One of those is that we're about partnering. So you're going to see a position that we just created called our Community Collaborative Specialist or Director. And that person's responsibility is kind of be like a development officer for a university, but they're going to go out. We've got so many people who say they want to help us. You know, Shell wants to help us. The United Way wants to help us. The Sertoma Club wants. So this person is going to say, all right, who wants to help? And then we're going to line up those things that we need help with. And we're going to start matching those things. Because the problem with Lafayette Parish School District is we've never opened up our arms to all the help that's out there. Everybody wants to help. And we don't need to be picky about it. We just need to be matchmakers. Like at Thibodeau Tech, for instance, if Shell wants to come in and build a big microbiology lab, fine. Because Shell knows if those kids have that course and they work in the same environment, and we do some internships over at the Shell labs, that child is more likely to go into college, be an engineer or a microbiologist, and come back to work for Shell. Those are the kind of matchups we're talking about. So we're not going to be, we're going to be loose. We're going to say, look, you got something to offer? We've got a lady who says, I will landscape NP Moss Annex once they finish redoing it. I'll landscape the whole place. You know, what an offer that is. We've got people who want to build a new gym, but before we've said, no, we're not going to let you build that new gym, because if we can't have a new gym at every school, we're not going to have a new gym at your school. What a dumb way to do business. You know? So you have to know that we're going to be so open in our asks. Now, you notice, one more minute, I'm not asking you for any kind of a tax increase. That's not on the table. What we're saying is you give us 2 years to prove ourselves, and at some point, somebody's got to get some money to fix our schools. But I guarantee it won't be $1.1 billion. I guarantee you it will be close to around $400 million. And I guarantee you that we can do it in a way that everybody can be happy with. It doesn't have to be a property tax. It could be a combination of a 1 cent dedicated sales tax. 1 year, $50 million, we're going to build you 3 schools. At the end of that 1 year, if we've done what we said we're going to do, okay, we want another 1 cent dedicated sales tax for the next year to build 3 more schools. So that you don't have to go out on some 30-year bond issue extravaganza that you don't know where the money's going. It's very accountable. You give us this, we're going to do this. You give us this, we're going to do this. I think people will be willing to help us once we prove ourselves. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Cooper. Okay, now we designed this program so that we'd have time to take questions from the audience. So is there anyone out there who would like to ask Dr. Cooper a question? What I'd ask you to do is to stand and articulate your question, but try to keep it simple so that I can re-ask the question for the tape and Dr. Cooper can respond. Do we have any questions from the audience? Would you stand up?
Yes.
Okay.
Mike Keating. Dr. Cooper, I'm very concerned about the curriculum that the students are being taught through the schools. When I went to school, we had Louisiana history, U.S. history, and civics. And I'd like to know if any of these courses are being applied today in Lafayette Parish.
Okay, it's a curriculum question. Mr. Keating wants to know whether the basic curriculum subjects that we all took in high school are going to be applicable, and I'm going to ask Dr. Cooper to sort of restate some of the question in your response.
The basic curriculum that we use in the school is dictated by the state. Now that is not an excuse, but the basic curriculum, and the new one's coming out called the core curriculum. And it's by law, we have to teach that curriculum. Now here's the fallacy in that. We tend to think, oh, we have to do the core curriculum, we don't have time for anything else. So you're exactly right. When we talk about art, that's not necessarily in the core curriculum. When we talk about the civics and American history, that's in the core curriculum, but we don't emphasize it very much because it's not tested. So we have to make a choice in Lafayette Parish about how do you create a holistic child who understands history, who understands civic responsibility. So my answer to you is that right now we are not doing a very good job with what you talked about, the civics, the American history, those kinds of things, because they're not tested. But what we are preparing to do in this next year as we look at that issue and a couple of others is we have to put emphasis on those areas that are going to go back to, as you said, what we all learned. One of the problems in our children today is they have no historical perspective. You know, they have none. You ask them about the Declaration of Independence, and 9 out of 10 will tell you, even 9 out of 10 of the brighter students won't know where that was done, who did it, and why. So I'm all in favor of what you just said. We're not going to use the core curriculum that the state gives us as an excuse not to teach the things that are important to produce this well-rounded student that has to have some social responsibility and sense of history and sense of why we're so lucky to live in America.
Thank you. Any other, okay.
You mentioned working with daycares, preschool students. I say there's probably a good population in very much need of support that don't even go to daycares before preschool.
Okay, the question has to do with Dr. Cooper talking before about the partnerships with daycares and Head Start programs, but the question is about what about those students, those children who do not attend any sort of daycare or at the home until they go to kindergarten?
There are 2 parts to our early child care program. One is to service the existing child cares, the existing children in those child cares and Head Starts, to assist them in any way that they will allow us to assist them. But there is a second part that is in the turnaround plan that says we're going to identify every birth to 5-year-old child in this district who's not being served. We've already started that process. We know that there were 455 who started kindergarten last year who were not in any kind of a child care. So we're going to look at those children and make sure that we figure out a way to get them into some kind of a program. Even if it's our people going out and setting up some classrooms where we need to set them up. But that's a very good question, and we have to figure out how many of those children there are, and we're beginning that process. We know there were 455 children last year who entered kindergarten who weren't served, and we're going to go find out, why that happened, and we got to go back down and find that next 455, but we can't wait until they hit kindergarten. So that's a mammoth job. It's going to take us about 3 years to complete it, but by the end of that 3 years, we want to have everybody who is born to be able to have the opportunity to go to some kind of a child care program that's quality.
Okay, anyone else? Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, Bobby Dowling. Dr. Cooper, I'd like to know about the curriculum that you're teaching in schools. Will the parents have any input to see the literature, books that they're using in all the schools?
The question is about the curriculum. We just had a curriculum question. This one is specifically about parental input into the curriculum and the textbook selection.
The way we're going to handle that, and again, I'm not hiding behind the state because we don't do that. The state's got a core curriculum, a set number of textbooks. Bobby Jindal just passed a law that sealed that for us. We don't have any choice in a certain level of that. But every school is going to be required to have a parent-teacher organization, a viable parent-teacher organization that can help to look at these places where we do have choices about what textbooks we use. Now remember, the district is going to get out of the business of saying everybody has to use the same thing. This is going to come down to the school level. So parents, teachers, and the principal at the school are going to be able to make some choices about those kinds of things that we have choices in.
I think we had a question, Richard, just a moment. I think we had a question on this side, did we? Okay, Richard.
Dr. Cooper, I'm very concerned about teacher morale because right now the teachers are being clobbered in the Louisiana legislature. Effectively, they're losing tenure unless you're in the 4 years in the top 10%. 4 out of 5 years. You're going to have standardized tests where it's not affecting the student's grade. It's not affecting whether they're going to be promoted except for the LEAP test that you have. And you've got a large number of students, particularly at the high school level, they sit at those computers, they take those standardized tests, and they really don't care about what answers they're putting down because it's not going to affect their grade, etc. And then if a teacher gets rated ineffective, a teacher spends all his life studying in the classroom, all that experience, gets rated ineffective because students really don't care about these tests. 2 years in a row, they can lose their job. So I'm really concerned about teacher morale on these issues.
Just to synthesize briefly for the tape, Richard Cusimano is asking about protections for teachers and the evaluation program and the new tenure rules.
You're absolutely right that the morale of teachers is down, and any human beings would be. I mean, they're really being picked upon. And there's probably 1% of the teaching force in Lafayette Parish that aren't good teachers. But everybody's having to pay the price because it's like, oh, none of those teachers are doing a job. Well, I've been to almost every school now. I'm looking at all of them. They're working really hard, and it gets to the points I made a while ago. It's not that we don't have effective teachers. It's that we have all these children coming in with all these problems, and these teachers don't get a chance to teach. So the things I just explained to you earlier, the early childhood, the health and wellness, the opportunity school, we've got to remove those barriers, and then those teachers are going to do fine. I can't change the law, but I think we can change the morale of teachers. If they know that I'm in there with them saying, I understand, if I don't try to help you fix these other extraneous problems, then you're gonna end up not being renewed, not because you're not a good teacher, but because you had such an overwhelming obstacle in front of you called your class that has all these problems that you weren't able to succeed. So my job is to, no matter who the governor is or who the legislature is or who the president is, that we build this infrastructure in Lafayette Parish that everybody in the schools knows they can trust me to make sure we're not going to let them fall through the crack, that we're gonna understand the battles they're facing. And I think we're beginning to make that happen. But that's gonna take, again, just like we're trying to prove to the public that we're gonna use your money right, the teachers are gonna have to give me a couple of years to prove to them we're serious about this, that we're not gonna let you get caught up in some state trap, that we're gonna help you and make sure that that doesn't occur.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is about student population. It seems that some facilities are very much overpopulated while others are underpopulated. I'm wondering, what is there a component in the plan that deals with the distribution?
Okay, this question is about student populations and what are the plans for perhaps equalizing that distribution?
The population issue and facility issue is huge, you know, and I'll just tell you how I've tried to deal with that right now. I want to fix the internal things, the teaching pieces first, just those programs I've just talked about. Now, next year, we're going to have what I call a blue ribbon committee that's going to begin to look at the demographics of the school district. How many kids are in each school? What the facilities look like. And I can tell you it's a mess. I mean, we build brand new schools, and the next year we have 12 temporary buildings. We're not planning. I mean, we got, like in the Youngsville area, for instance, in the South Lafayette area, they're going to have thousands of new homes in the next 3 years, all of them basically in the $125,000 to $175,000 range. You know who's going to buy those homes? It's young people who have children. We're already overcrowded. I don't have an answer for you exactly. What I will tell you is that right now we're doing number counts at every school to see if there's any way we can adjust some populations. Because of the zoning and the deseg order, my hands are a little bit tied. But I never believe you can use things for an excuse. I think we look at that, we see what our situation is, we go back to the judge or the NAACP or whomever, and we say, look, we need to change some zoning here because this school is overcrowded, this school has some space available. Or we might change the grade configuration of schools so that we have instead of having a K to 8 school, we might have a K to 3 school, and then the next school, instead of being a K to 8 school, it may be a 4th to, to 8th grade school or something like that. But my point is that we have a lot of options to look at. I don't have any idea how that's going to look. I just acknowledge the problem, and that this next year we're going to try to fix that.
I have Lainey, would you like to ask a question?
Yes. This is the shorthand for the question. There was an article in the New York Times called "Why Aren't There Any White Kids at Our School?" I know that there are at least a few schools in the system that are like 95% minority, 95% free and reduced lunch. And my question is this something that you consider a problem? If so, would you take it on, and what might you do to work on that?
The question specifically deals with how Dr. Cooper intends to address the issue of high free and reduced lunch student populations and where to go with that.
Well, I think the question also, to me, deals with the community's trust. Right now, even though we've got a lot of great teachers and a lot of great things happening in Lafayette Parish, overall we're a C school district. We've got over half of our schools that are C's and D's and F. And parents are not coming to these schools. Not only just the white middle class, but the black middle class. That's the first part, that we know people aren't coming to the schools because they don't trust the schools and they don't feel like they can get a quality education. I don't think it has anything to do necessarily with black and white. I think it has to do with, I want my child to have a great education. The second piece of this, everybody has to understand, the first person I went to see when I got to town was the bishop. And I said, look, I'm not in competition with you. I'm Catholic. So that's not a big deal, but it says to you, if people want to choose a parochial school, then they should be able to do that. If they want to choose a private school, they should be able to do that. All I want to do is to create a Lafayette public school that is so good that when you're thinking about it, you're going to add that as an option. I may want to go to parochial, I may want to go to private, but you know what? I may want to go to Lafayette public schools. So my job is to make us so good that it will be an option for those parents to make the choice to come back.
I have a question that was submitted to me in advance. I'd like to ask it now, and this specifically deals with Lafayette's unique community resource in the LUS Fiber. Okay. The question itself is, how do you see the school district utilizing Lafayette's technological advantage to improve curriculum or reduce the cost of instruction during your stewardship?
The whole fiber issue for Lafayette is amazing. And I'll have to admit, I didn't realize the breadth of the resources. We are in partnership with LUS. We're in partnership with Joey Durrell's city planning process. And we had some subgroups that have broken out of that, so that we are looking at, one of the things we're doing is we're going to be piloting a program this next year where we have the bandwidth necessary so that we can put iPads in the hands of a certain number of students. We're going to start that process of going from textbooks to loading those textbooks onto their iPads so that they can have all their textbooks in one place. It takes a lot of bandwidth to operate all that stuff. The other part, though, which is really exciting to me, one of the things we have in the works is a project that's going to create electronic medical records for our students, so that these health and wellness teams in these 44 schools, they're going to have the medical records for children, the health and wellness records for children, and electronically, if that child moves to another school, then all we have to do is just electronically put it over there. Lafayette General has talked to us, and we're going to pursue this, of doing telemedicine, where we have children that come to the nurse's office, and if they don't have a doctor or, and need some help, then we can do telemedicine where a doctor at Lafayette General can help that nurse decide what needs to happen. So there are a lot of exciting things going on in that area. Our problem in Lafayette, it's not a problem we can't overcome, but it's a problem, is we have some great programs using technology. But our big problem is it's very expensive, and we've got to figure out a way to replace these end-user devices, we call them, like the iPads or the computers, about every 5 to 6 years, because technology grows and we get behind. We don't have a funding source for that right now. We have to figure that out. But the other problem is we have one computer technician for about every 8,000 end users. If you have a good school district, you're going to have one technician for about 1,000 end users. Those people are expensive. So we got to work in conjunction with all these folks that are excited about the fiber and all that in Lafayette. There are people who will come and help us, but we are going to maximize that. But in the meantime, we've got 2 or 3 little pilots, electronic medical records, the iPads, things like that we're going to be starting on.
We have time for maybe one more question. Yes, sir.
Kirk Long, Dr. Cooper, these both actually kind of 2 questions and both regard to
Brief, though.
First of all, are you confident with the continued availability over the next couple of years with Medicaid dollars to go ahead and fund the health and wellness services? And second, this parish has adopted, in my opinion, what is a particularly distasteful policy of not providing kids with lunches during the course of the day. If for whatever reason that lunch bill isn't paid, whether it's through free lunch or mom and dad forgot to send a check, you go through the stigma of getting a peanut butter sandwich. That to me would be inconsistent with the health and wellness program. I would hope that morally we would go ahead and look at some kind of policy and maybe make some changes.
Okay, the question is about what about our trust in the future of Medicaid funds to continue these health and wellness programs you've been talking about, and how to address the issue of children getting a good warm lunch if they're not on free and reduced lunch or their parents have not provided for them. And we have a couple of minutes left.
The Medicaid issue, I am confident about that. One way or the other, there will be Medicaid dollars. The problem in schools is we don't access those dollars. We earned about $156,000 last year in Medicaid reimbursement. We should be earning a couple of million at least. So they are changing some of the rules, but regardless of that, we can be flexible enough to figure that out. The second point is even more important to me, that you're absolutely right. I mean, the whole idea of health and wellness is we don't stigmatize anybody. And we're going to work on that. We're going to fix it. I know exactly what you're talking about. It does happen. We get caught in a bind with, well, if we start doing that, that parent's never going to pay. Well, wait a minute. Let's go to a judge. Let's go to, child court, or whatever we need to do. We can fix that problem. We can't just not feed the child because we don't want to go the extra step of forcing the parent to do the right thing. Now, in some instances, the parent may not be able to. Well, that's still our job, to feed the child. So I'm in perfect agreement with you. I know that practice has been going on. We are going to fix that because it's central to everything we're doing. Nobody should be stigmatized about anything.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Dr. Cooper, and I'd ask you to help me thank him. We have a few minutes to stay around in case people have a...
Sure.